my student Diego fixed it. So what we need to do is I will appreciate if you could use this because some of the people couldn't hear you. My question is hold this wire.
Lick your fingers before you grab it.
This is 1950s technology. Anyway, welcome back, and I think so far we had great sessions. We had 2 sessions in morning and then Don Powell. I would like you to meet some of our speakers. On my left is Mr. John Marmaduke. He's the CEO and President of Hastings Incorporated. Hastings just went public a couple of months ago. Mr. Paul Engler is next to Mr. John Marmaduke. He's the CEO or President of Cactus Feeders, Amarillo. Then we have Mr. Lloyd Kruckeberg. He's the President of LEK Technologies. If you want to buy PCs, LEK, they are very good in Amarillo. And they have been becoming extremely successful, especially in the last couple of years. And then Mr. Michael Callahan, CEO and Managing Director of Northwest Texas Healthcare System. So the format for this, if each CEO takes about 15 minutes and 11 observations about alliances and joint ventures, and after that we will open this floor for your discussion. We have about 1.5 hours. Mr. Marmaduke.
Want to get another microphone?
If you don't mind, I'm going to stand up, and I don't think I'm confident enough that we get to hold the mic and the wire at one time. If you can't hear me, just raise your hand, and I'll try to project it more your way. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the strategic alliance that we first had with Walmart when we were a wholesale company, Western Merchandise, and how that developed into a joint venture, the pitfalls of that joint venture, and what Walmart learned from it, what I learned from it, and then maybe to incorporate that into sort of an overview of where I think our contribution can be in the future with a lot of these future changes going on. In 1991, we sold our wholesale company, Western Merchandise, to Walmart, and at that time we were about a $70 million wholesaler of used books and Pickens. And Walmart wanted a company that was similar to themselves in the sense that they wanted a company that was entrepreneurial, fairly flat organizations, ethical, and willing to grow quickly. And we fit that bill. And so we were more than happy to sell to them because we saw very quickly disintermediation, which those of you who are not in school or didn't take a degree in finance, disintermediation simply means getting rid of the middleman. And we were a middleman. And I wanted to sell the company. Now that was the easy part of it. Convincing my dad that he ought to sell this company, that he'd worked, that he'd built for nothing for 30 years was the hard part. Because there was one word that wasn't in my dad's vocabulary, and that was exit strategy. He didn't give a damn about an exit strategy. He was going to keep that company forever. Well, it turned out to be a great thing. He eventually came around to our way of thinking. And today there is one major rack job left in the entire United States and they're losing money. And just in 1991 there were 4 and they were all profitable. That's how quickly things change. So it does help to have a view about the future. Now, what we had gone through in the United States between 1991 and 98 is going on in a microcosm in a much slower fashion in Mexico, where we were called upon to work with Walmart in initially a strategic alliance and later a joint venture. The strategic alliance was with the largest discounter in Mexico, Cipher, FRA. And Cipher had a number of businesses, primarily all retail, but their main business was they had sort of discount stores like Walmart. And so Walmart did a joint venture with them, gave them some capital to open some more stores, and they started learning the Mexican way of doing business and what their Mexican customers really want. Now in Mexico, they've had what most of the world has had, and that is oligopolies. Oligopolies are wonderful for people who are in business because if you happen to be in one, you don't have to work very hard. It's like the old days with bankers' hours. You can be on the golf course at 3 and never make a lick because you own 40% you control 49% of the business, the other guy controls 51%. And you meet together, you meet once a month and have lunch and decide who's going to get the 51% the next month. Okay? And so there's very little impetus for change. That was all over Mexico. You know, to say right now that crony capitalism is being discredited by the Asia downdraft is a farce. It's being discredited all over the world, in every single culture, because it simply doesn't work. Those people are lazy, capital is put in the wrong places, capital doesn't move quickly, and there's no interest for technology or innovation. So we went to Mexico, a country that was used to having crony capitalism at best. And it was so intertwined with the political system that if you happen to be a politician, you magically had a very rewarding life as a businessman, and vice versa. It was amazing how they shift one year to the other. Well, here comes Walmart. Walmart not only doesn't understand this kind of culture, they hate it. Okay, so they needed a joint venture partner because they knew that if they just went in and did it the Walmart way, they'd be shot at, you know, and it's absolutely the case. There's a joke in Mexico. You know what this is in Mexico? That's a dead politician. This is a live one. And that is not underestimated. Let me tell you, everybody's on the, they call it mordida, the body. And basically, if you're going to play in that country, you have to be willing to give the payoffs because nothing runs without it. In fact, if a lot of their officials, lower level officials, didn't accept payoffs, they couldn't feed their families because the government pays them nothing to live on. They expect that they're going to get graft and corruption. So anyway, Seifert knew the lay of the land, and Walmart had superior systems and concepts. So it was a great marriage. So here we go down to try to set up distribution of music, books, and videos into the Seifert stores. And the interesting concept here is that although the situation was economic, and although everybody philosophically knew that Walmart was going to be the power in Mexico within a few short years, and although everybody knew that their system was antiquated and over drinks it, all agreed with it, when it came to them making a personal concession of removing comfort from their level of doing business, the answer was invariably no. And what the major changes that happened in Mexico only happened when people lost their jobs or some other crisis. And I think that's what's going on all over the world right now. I think the Asia downdraft is the greatest thing to ever hit Japan. I spent time in Japan. And their corruption is so much more underneath the surface of Mexico's, but it's just as pervasive. And that's one of the reasons their economy is no longer working. So, my experience in Mexico, I can give you a lot of thumbnail sketches about this, that, and the other, but I don't really think that's going to be terribly helpful. What I would sum up and say is this. Number one, like Don Powell, it is more, the deal may be economic, but the barrier can be social and political. Finding the right partner is the first, second, and third most important thing for you. The next thing would be to get that right person and inculcate them into your culture by bringing them here. There is no way in the world that West Texas is going to go down to Mexico City and move and groove, let me assure you. Because you haven't a clue all the nuances that are going on just in what they're talking about, and they're speaking English. Now I'll tell you something else I found fascinating. I'd sat across the table from fellows who didn't speak English, I didn't speak Spanish, we had a translator, and I knew when they were lying. Okay? I mean, some things are just universal. And they knew I knew they were lying. And they kept on lying. Now, and that's something that you're going to have a hard part with, because most of the world does not have as high regard for the truth as we do. That's another social factor. If it happens to be in the betterment of their job or what they're considered perfect, they'll lie to you all day long and never lose a moment of sleep over. We had a number of duplicitous things done to us that you would never think would happen in the United States. In fact, you'd want somebody fired over those things like that. Business as usual down there. So, number one, I think is social. Number one's the right partner. Number two is social. Number three is political. And the truth is, if you really think you're going to go down here and grease the switch politically, you're a fool. If because they're much bigger people who've been at it a lot longer, who are much better insulated into the marketplace, who are going to get there ahead of it. So just trying to do it like they do it, you're going to be handicapped when you get there. Now, today, Walmart is very, very successful in Mexico. They're the largest retailer in Mexico. The joint venture became an acquisition, secretly now part of Walmart, and the chairman was on the Walmart board. So that evolution went from strategic alliance to a joint venture to ownership, which is really the logical way. And it all started back with Sam Walton visited Mexico over 12, 14 years ago to find the right partner. He spent a lot of time finding that right partner. And if he had made the wrong decision on that right partner today, there would be Walmart presence in Mexico, or it would be one that was highly diminished for that. So that one decision is the most important. Now let me sort of give you the overarching theory, I think, of strategic alliances, joint ventures. The United States has been the greatest exporter the world has ever seen. Unfortunately, the greatest export we've done most of this century has been ideas. And that's not unfortunate, because I think our ideas are valid and the whole world's hungry for them. But I think we're now going to couple those ideas with a lot of very tangible talents and products. The world is ready for what we offer. Don't think for a minute the Japanese know that they can buy strawberries for a third as much as the United States can. No good really from manufacturers or otherwise. Hell, they get on the plane at LAX with a Sony under their arm going back to Tokyo, because they have so many restrictive barriers to the competition and getting the price down to consumers. It's the same story in Mexico. It's the same story all over the world. They want what we have. And they're more than open to let us in. The barrier is going to be the gatekeepers. I call them the little Napoleons. And sometimes the smaller they are in the positions, the harder they'll fight for preserve. Those will be the barriers, not the people, not the consumers. It will be the petty bureaucrats who are going to find the reason not to respect. The petty bureaucrats that kept Walmart's 175,000-foot store from grand opening, because it didn't have the right number of trees planted. First, if you don't understand about Mexico, it's not what's on the books, it's what they enforce. And what they enforce depends on what? Moneda. So if you don't pay the bike, then they enforce the law. If you pay the bike, they don't enforce it. That's hard for us to realize, because we think the law is a fairly constant thing. It's not in a lot of countries. It's just economic. So we're going from an exporter of ideas to an exporter of ideas with products and services. And I think this next century is going to be a very American century, not less. I think America is uniquely poised to be the greatest economic engine the world's ever seen. Much greater than the economic engine that we've all experienced. And the world is just waiting for us. If you want to read an article that's most thought-provoking, Mort Zuckerman, who's the publisher of Hastings World Report, wrote that article called Next American Century. And think about it. I mean, we all think of the obvious stuff, like so far ahead technologically. We have an open system. We have respect for laws. But when it really gets down to building today's marketplace leaders, we also have to have civility, respect, diversity. All of those things that we sort of now take for granted are just words in a lot of foreign countries. Diversity in Mexico? Give me a break. If you see a woman in a position of power, it means that her husband died and left her. There's no diversity there. Japan, same story. So we are so far ahead of them in so many areas, and they're areas that are social, that don't take a PC revolution to catch up. They take generations to catch up, because they have to go through the social fabric of an entire civilization. So I think we've got an incredible lead in the next century in creating a society that's going to bring a better way of life to many, many people. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Engler, CEO of Cactus.
Can you all hear me? Yeah. Good. A little bit like John. I'm sure I can't keep two hands on that. Well, first of all, it is a pleasure to be with you today, and I regret very much that I was unable to attend the morning sessions, and all reports that work very well. Here again, my talk is disjointed, undoubtedly going to be, it's going to be based on some of the experiences that Cactus has had in terms of strategic alliances, and we have had some. Cactus, to give you a little background for those of you who are not familiar with the company, we presently have 6 commercial feed yards, all of which are located in the Texas Panhandle. The furthest one is about 150 miles from Amarillo, located in Tariq, Texas. We're just the final completion of that yard. We put the first cattle in there approximately 90 days ago. We feed to have a one-time capacity that right at 350,000 head, and we finish out about 750,000 cattle a year. Now, before you all say what a wonderful thing that is, keep in mind that for the last 10 months they've been losing anywhere from $60 to $120 a head. And so we might be much better off, I feel much better standing up here and saying, you know, that we have 50 head on here. Than what we have. But as Richard and Kathy over here can tell you, that attest to that this is one of the characteristics of the cattle business. As far as that's concerned, all of agriculture is kind of a roller coaster deal. The other, here a while back, I think Cactus suffered from a little overexposure in the press. We were the people, you know, that sued Oprah. And I still have fond hopes that when I croak and they bury me, that they put something on my tombstone other than this is the guy that sued Oprah Winfrey. And that is really one of the goals in my life. I've got one overhead here, and I'm just going to leave that on there. And this is my definition of a strategic alliance, and you can tell I'm pretty long-winded. That's probably about the longest sentence that any of you have seen in a long time. I didn't realize it was long until we did this. And I'd like to read that to you just to so it can hopefully translate in your mind. This is just following the definition. It's when 2 or more independent parties combine their respective strengths, such as their assets, resources, and management, which are synergistic, and that's the key word, synergistic with one another, to form a vertically integrated alliance with the common objective of creating a much stronger and more competitive enterprise, which in its combination minimizes the risk that each entity has in operating separately. Now, this kind of goes along as I explain and go into a little detail at least on what Cactus experiences on their strategic alliances. I think you'll find that we follow through with, you know, with that philosophy, that definition of a strategic alliance. Now, we've been in the cattle feeding business here. Last phase, I initially started at commercial cattle feeding operation at Hereford in 1960-61. And there was an interlude after I sold out and came back down to Cactus. Now I've been in business here about 25 years. And we had a problem with selling cattle, merchandising our cattle, because most of the cattle that are sold on a weekly basis here in the Panhandle are sold on a live average basis. All the cattle, if you look at the quotations as they quote the market, USDA or Texas Cattle Feeders quote the market each week, cattle sell in a very small range, maybe within 50 cents. For instance, this week, all 59 cents. I imagine 90% of the cattle sold for 59 cents. 59 cents a pound. The difference in value of the very best cattle based on their quality and their dressing percentage and grading and so on and so forth, is the poorest lot could be as much as $15 or 15 cents a pound difference in their value. So I had a problem with the live average method of selling cattle where they all bring the same price. The packers do not recognize the difference in the values. If they don't recognize the difference in the value and the cattle all bring the same price for live, that means that we do not recognize the difference in the values of the cattle we buy from the rancher. So it pulls back, it inhibits progress in the breeding programs and so on and so forth. We get the true value of of our cattle based on the quality and the packers, and we in turn would differentiate the values of the prices that we pay the rancher. So that he has an incentive to upgrade herd and so on. So I said, well, we don't like that. Extremely irritating. And I like to tell a story, it is a true story, that we've been buying this one group of cattle from a very progressive rancher here for 2 or 3 years, and he spent a lot of money in upgrading his herd, buying the best bulls he could, and so on and so forth, studying the genetics and so on. And he said, you know, how come, he said, my cattle, you know, just bring the same as everybody else's, and with some differential, of course. And he said, how can I get more value for my cattle? And I said, well, one way that you can is to perhaps feed them with a custom feed jar. He was very apprehensive about this because he hadn't done that and he recognized the risks that were involved and so on. And so, but after time, he decided to send the cattle, you know, to our feed yard. The fellow was very progressive, and he would stop once, so maybe every couple of weeks and look at his cattle. And it just so happened that we had made a little bit of a mistake when we yarded his cattle. We yarded them right next to a pen of Mexican Oriental. John, the Mexican Oriental, would fit all the descriptions that talk about that. Very low quality. About as poor quality cattle as you could imagine. Our cattle salesman called him up, the cattle were finished, asked him, you know, if he'd be interested in selling his cattle. He quoted a price to him. He said, look, he said, I don't know anything about the fed cattle market. He said, I'll leave that up to you. If you think it's time to sell the cattle, it's a fair price to sell. Okay? But right at the end of the telephone conversation, he said, by the way, he said, how about those cattle in that pen next to mine? And he said, did you sell those? He said, yeah. He said, I sold those this week also. He said, what price did you quote on my cattle? And I remember on a comparative basis, 62 cents. What did the pen bring that was next to mine? 61 cents. Well, it dramatizes it. In my opinion, that was a very bad system. And the other thing that bothered me was that we as cattle feeders know that there's a very critical endpoint when you should market your fed cattle. When they're finished, they should go. Carrying past that point, you're subject not only to an uneconomic situation as far as the cost of gain, but also is that the cattle become overfinished and they're going to be subject to discounts to get some fat. Nobody wants that extra fat. When you're selling your cattle under the prevalent situation here of the live average, the cattle buyer selects the time the day to buy your cattle. Comes by and says, well, I don't think they're finished yet. You have to see a little bit longer and so forth. I didn't like that because it was so critical that the cattle feeder should name the time when you ship your cattle because he knows when that physiological endpoint is. So I went to IVP at that time. This has been about 12 years ago, and tried to work out an arrangement with them to where we would slaughter our cattle on an arrangement that we would be paid on precisely what we produced. In other words, we were paid on how the cattle graded, how the dressing percentage, and so forth, discounts and all that sort of thing. I had a difficult time because actually the packer kind of liked the live average, the way it's selling. So we kept working on it. I had one thing going for me is that I had, before I came back down to Panhandle, here the second time I did tour duty with IBP for a 3-year period. And I left them there under the very best of conditions and with a lot of credibility. And I knew how the meat packing business worked and so on. So we were able to work out the deal which is now kind of famous as the formula selling. We slaughtered all of our cattle with IBP. We picked the shipping dates the cattle were ready to go. We give them estimates on our people go out and they're very expert on estimating the carcass weight, the animal after it's slaughtered, the dressing percentage, the grading, how many, what percent choice, what percent select, and so on. It's in its 12th year. It has met the test of time. And I believe that we've gone along here doing something that's consistent with this definition. Now, one of the problems that we encountered, and this is important, I don't think any strategic alliance is going to survive if it isn't subject to amendment, changes, and so forth, because things are going to change, just like John mentioned earlier. And that's precisely what happened with our IVP relationship. We went on a formula basis, where we're paid on the basis of our cattle through kind of a complex formula. Comes back on what they had to pay for their cattle lives and how their cattle graded and so on. So we're paid because we're paid on what they buy, what comes into their plant on the formula. And I told our people at that time, I said, if this is successful, this is strictly going to be a transitory deal, because if it's good for us, it's going to be good for other people. And the more people that get on this formula type program, the less sampling, of supply and demand, on cattle is going to take place, because there's no negotiating, on our deal, negotiating value. And that's precisely, what happened. Other people have gotten on it, and so on and so forth. So I went back to IVP, and I said, this deal's in the ditch. And I said, we've got to work on it, and so on and so forth. He said, what do you want to do, Paul? And I said, well, very simply, and I realized it's much more complicated than this. Instead of a formula based on what's coming into the plant, purchasing the cattle, I want to get paid on what's going out of the plant. In other words, the cattle price. We're right in the process of introducing that method. Worked very well. I think that you're going to see more of these type of arrangements in agriculture, and it's just a trend, whether you agree with the trend or not. It's certainly an argumentative thing, but you're going to see more alliances between producers and manufacturers in the agricultural field. It's just getting that competitive, of course. The other strategic alliance that I'd like to talk to you a little bit about is the first one that we really had on that was going global. We've been running cattle in Mexico on the grazing deal for 50 years. That really, we haven't been active in the management of that. We just put cattle down there with a partner, a Mexican partner. I wouldn't step foot out of the United States without partners. Or the other people in the strategic alliance, they're native, of that particular country. We started out, actually, along 2 years ago, to investigate the possibilities or the potential of setting up commercial cattle feeding in Argentina. What prompted us on that is that, fully realizing we didn't know anything about Argentina, we were fortunate enough to have a young man who was a native, grew up and got his primary education in Argentina, came to the United States with his wife, and got his graduate degree at Texas A&M in agricultural economics, and then came to work for us. And worked for us for 12 years here. We're doing very well. We had the utmost confidence not only in his abilities, but his integrity and so forth. And it was necessary for him, for family reasons, to move back to Argentina. I'd gone down there with him earlier and looked at what I thought was some of the potentials that Argentina offered for cattle feeding. And then we started out, we decided that it was feasible and so forth. And then we started searching out this so-called strategic alliance, partner with the other party, and so on and so forth. We took a lot of time in doing that. And actually, it took a lot of the 2-year period. And then, because we wanted to make sure, we were fortunate in coming up with what we feel is an excellent joint venture partner. It's a company called Cresud, C-R-E-S-U-D. They are a public company. They trade on NASDAQ here. Merrill Lynch brought them public a little over a year ago. They're the largest landowners in Argentina. They farm and ranch about 750,000 acres. And they run about 165,000 cattle. By far the largest. They're probably one of the biggest claims to fame insofar as the marketability of stock here in the United States. They're owned 39% by the Detroit Pros. So obviously they're extremely well financed. They don't pretend to know everything about the cattle feeding business. In fact, they say they know very little, and that's the attraction that we bring to the table. from our standpoint, the fact that they're producing or grazing or running 165,000 head of cattle, they are an excellent source of cattle for our feed. I just got back from Argentina 2 days ago. Been down there for about 10 days. We finally got the project underway to purchase land. Incidentally, kind of an interesting little sidelight. We go around this country and underground water for feed yards normally is not a problem. It's real well. You've got good geological information and so forth. And big aquifer, overall aquifer. So normally it's not a problem. And I assume that it'll be about the same thing in Argentina. There isn't such a thing as a big aquifer down there. And underground water runs in underground rivers or channels. We went through a exhaustive effort to try to find a site that we felt was good from all the other things, the climate, the slope, nearness to fenders and that sort of thing. We go in there and drill a test well. We either didn't have water or salt. And we finally found a location that did fit. And we finally getting the project underway. So it'll be very modest. 22,000 heads of feed yard initially. We're operating on an extremely tight budget. Somebody said, why are you doing that? And I said, I'm not 100% sure this deal is going to work. And I said, if it doesn't, I don't want to leave a lot of money down. And that's just my thinking. So we are going to be very conservative. We are convinced that we can produce high quality fed beef cheaper down there than any place in the world. That's just one thing. Marketing is something else. And we have all kinds of reservations about marketing those cattle, and we might have to do some things we don't do. One other little example, I think, of a strategic alliance is very prevalent in this area, where we have so much cattle food, and that's what we call, normally called retained ownership, where the rancher, the producer, has a program. Instead of selling his cattle at the ranch level, he brings them in, makes a deal with the custom feed yard on a partnership type basis, where they share the ownership of the cattle. Feed yard, in most instances, will furnish the financing for the feed, maybe even the cattle and so forth, and they'll partner on those. There's a lot of that done. Here again, I think that's another example. Gives us probably fits that definition. Thank you very much. I certainly welcome your questions and look forward to it. Thank you.
Our third speaker is Lloyd President of LEK. And I wanted to know that we do have 7 representatives from Taiwan, and they are our MD students, so they are our PhD studies. And they are interested in
Excellent. Then we have some more comments on top of what I've got. My name is Lloyd Kruckeberg, and I'm president of LEK Technologies. And a lot of people, even in this area, don't understand what we do here in Amarillo. What we do is we manufacture computer systems and ship them all across the United States. And we import the parts from Taiwan and finish the products here. And a lot of people think, from locally here, think that we're just a little resale store, and some people nationally think we're some huge conglomerate. So it kind of misnomer unless you actually come in and see what we do. But what I'm going to talk about today is some of the strategic alliances in the technology industry and what effect they have on us, and as consumers and also as end users. A definition of a strategic alliance, pretty much Paul hit it. Two companies forming an alliance to use both their strengths to come up with a better solution to problems and work together for mutual benefit. Some of the strategic alliances that have been in the technology industry in the last few years are some of the biggest companies now in the industry. And I'll go over the first one is 3Com, which is a networking company which does networking software, hardware. And they have part of a solution to hook up offices from point A to point B. And they were looking for a fix to hook up all their offices together. So what they went back and did is get an alliance with U.S. Robotics, which is the #1 in the telecommunications industry. And by doing that, they were able to complete what they were looking for, which is a global solution that they can offer the customer from one end all the way to the other. And what we've seen here is some of the best technology come out from networks all the way down into all the telecommunications and integrating those two technologies together to do more good in that area of expertise. Another alliance in the technology industry that's happened, and always happened in the last 2 years, is Gateway 2000, is coming up behind Dell. They're like trying to basically match Dell. And they have been very strong in the home market, but very weak in the business market. So they were looking for a partner to partnership with so they could make more inroads into the business computers. They went out and hunted down a company, a Taiwanese company called ALR, which manufactures computers and servers, basically for Windows NT and Windows Enterprise. What they wanted to do is have that expertise so they could go in and get more business accounts and basically take them away from their competitors. These also started as a good strategic alliance using Gateway's marketing, because ALR wasn't really known for marketing. They had very hard to get their point across what the technology was and why it was better, but for people who used it, knew that they may have built some of the best servers in the country. So Gateway and ALR started together and formed a partnership, similar to the way 3Com and US Robotics. Both of these partnerships have ended in the stronger company taking over the weaker company. In the case of 3Com and US Robotics, 3Com bought out US Robotics. In the case of Gateway, Gateway bought out ALR. So to Gateway's and both 3Com's benefit, they came out way ahead. And I don't think when they went first into the partnerships, they expected, especially 3Com, to actually be, the US Robotics didn't expect 3Com to actually take them over. Some other interesting alliances that you may not know is there's 3 manufacturers that manufacture the CPUs that go in most of your desktop computers. Intel being number 1, AMD being number 2, and Cyrix being number 3. And Cyrix and AMD have both formed some interesting partnerships in the last 2 years. Cyrix, which is a development company out of Richardson, basically designs CPUs, or central processing units for computers. They were looking for somebody to manufacture the chip. They had the technology to design the chip, but they did not have foundries or the plants to go ahead and make that chip. So they partnered with IBM, which has some of the best research and development and resources available. And from that, they produced a very high level of Pentium class chips that rival Intel's. They don't have, a lot of people don't even know about their chips, but they are very stable chips. One of the advantages that came from this partnership is IBM has been looking at manufacturing chips using copper as opposed to aluminum, where most of the chips that you have now are made out of aluminum. And they don't conduct electricity that well, so that keeps the speed of the computer slow. If you could use copper, which is about 10 times faster, your chips are going to be 10 times faster. And IBM has finally perfected a way to do that. And by partnering with Cyrix, what you're going to see is Cyrix is probably going to come out with some of the most innovative products over the next 2 to 3 years. Hopefully, IBM will make advantage of this partnership and promote it a little bit more than they have in the past and take a bigger hunk of Intel's business. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. This partnership didn't form into one company buying out the other. It's actually still working on as a partnership or a strategic alliance. One of the other ones is AMD, which is a competitor against Cyrix and Intel. They make CPUs. A lot of people don't know what they do. They've been making semiconductors for several years now. You can pull out some old radios from back in the 80s, and sure enough, you'll see AMD chips all over the place. But a lot of people wonder what they did. And what they've done is they've actually built a superior chip. In a lot of people's opinion, if you're independent than Intel has, they've got chips that are based on older technology, or actually socket 7 technology, which is what most of the Pentium chips are. I may be getting a little too technical, but Intel wanted to get rid of that market because they had to compete against Cyrix and AMD. So what they went out and did is to discontinue that whole line so that you had to go to Pentium 2. Well, they have a patent on the socket for Pentium 2, so AMD really can't build a chip yet using that socket, even though they're working on it anyway. So they had to come out with a better solution to stay in the business. So what they did is they formed an alliance with Compaq. And Compaq has helped them because AMD did not have any mainstream manufacturers using their product. They had a lot of small people using the product, but not any major people. So AMD and Compaq formed an alliance together, and now Compaq is able to produce machines that are under $1,000, which they were never able to do before. But by both companies doing this alliance, AMD's gotten some of the technical expertise from Compaq and marketing expertise to get their product on the market. And by working together, both of them hopefully will get AMD more on the market. But AMD's current K6 series it's a 233 K6 or a 300 K6, you can actually compare it to a Pentium 2, which is a lot, and it's about 50% of the cost. So that strategic alliance looks like it's going to be very good for AMD to get a lot more of the chips out there. But like I said, some of the pitfalls is that you're going into a strategic alliance, you want to know what your partner is, because it depends. You may have the agenda for them to buy you out, or you may not want them to buy you out. So you might want to look at it, because a lot of these companies didn't intend to get bought out when they first did their alliances. They intended just a partnership of resources. What happened is that some of the companies took over the other companies. Now I'm going to go in a little bit about what we've done as a strategic alliance. And we formed one with the Taiwanese firm, and we've also formed a couple of small alliances here in Amarillo that I'll go over. But the one that we did in Taiwan back in 1996, Intel was still working on a mobile module for their notebooks. And they were having a lot of problems with it, getting it not to overheat in the notebooks. So at the time, the fastest notebook that Intel had out was the 133 Pentium, while desktop units were 200 megahertz. Well, a friend of mine owns a plant in Taipei, in Taiwan, and he didn't have a presence in the United States, and he was manufacturing notebooks for Europe. But he couldn't understand what the U.S. market was wanting. So I got with him about 2 years ago and sat down with him and said, listen, I need to get another product, because I was carrying some people's products that were very unreliable. I need a reliable notebook, and I want to break the speed barrier of the current notebooks, which is 133 megahertz. So I went to him, and we sat down back in November of '96 and said, I want to build the fastest notebook, and instead of using Intel's mobile module or waiting a year for that mobile module to come out, I want to build it on the desktop chip, because that technology is already available, but that presents us with a problem of cooling the chip. And my friend said, there's no problem. I've got that solved. So we sat there and talked, and normally it would take maybe 6 months to a year to get a project like this going. He already had a notebook that was taking the desktop chip that he'd been working on, but he hadn't found a way to cool the chip. So with some ideas from our staff and some from his R&D firm, we developed a proprietary cooling system that would actually cool the 200 desktop chips. And in February, we got our first prototypes in December, which was only 1 month after we had first talked. Worked perfectly. Went into production in the end of January and announced the product February 14th. And we were the first company in the United States to offer a 200 megahertz notebook with MMX capability, even without MMX capabilities at the time, but we were the first. We've had about 30 to 40 articles nationally written about our products. And this is where strategic alliances help both partners. And it's a win-win situation. I have access to manufacturing, which I don't have enough capital funds to buy the manufacturing plant myself. So, and he doesn't have enough funds to put a full sales force in the United States. So what we did is we worked a deal where he would sell Australia and Europe, and we'd sell to the United States, Mexico, Canada, and England. So we kind of split it up. And what we're working on now is actually taking over all their marketing and selling all their products, including Europe. Because one of the things that they lack is the marketing skills to get the product to market, and that's one of our advantages by being close to end users, because we do have a retail shop in Amarillo. We can be close to the users and know what they're demanding. That's how we knew that people were wanting a faster notebook, where all the other people like Gateway, Intel, IBM, and Toshiba, they were married to Intel, and Intel said, you're not going to release another notebook until we come up with the mobile market. So it gave us a 6-month to a year head start. And now, right now, though, Intel has dictated that you have to build with a mobile module because they're discontinuing all the desktop chips. So we were in the process of redesigning, and at the end of August we'll have our new product out, which is based on Intel's new chip. But it's amazing how you can get a strategic alliance. One company that almost has a product, another company has the idea, and put them together and come up with a good product. So that's worked out for a win-win for both of us. Another alliance that we're working on locally, we just formed an alliance with the Kenyon Independent School District. And one of our technicians, that's the head of our service department, is going to teach a class to high school juniors and seniors of how to repair and install Nobel and NT networks and how to repair computers. This is only the second school district in the United States to ever offer such a class. And what we're hoping to do is train these students so that when they leave, if they decide they want to go on into the job world, they will be able to just go right from high school straight into a job. It's one of the most unique features that I've seen a school district want to offer, a vocational class that actually teaches you something that you're going to be able to make a living in. And our goal of the class is there's a lot of certifications that you can get that make yourself more valuable. And we're going to train these people to become Microsoft certified engineers. So that right after they graduate from high school, they're going to be able to go out, get that degree. If they want to move to Dallas, people with that certification can make up to $75,000 a year, straight out of high school. And what is different is that really nobody's teaching that technology right now unless you go pay for it. Most of the courses that teach that charge about $12,000. Matter of fact, one of our techs took that course, and we paid about $12,000 for him to go get certified, etc. But what we're hoping to do is train these high school students, and I think it's going to be a win-win both for the school district and both for us. Number one, are we teaching something and giving back to the community? But also, we're training more technicians, which are a little bit harder to find in Amarillo, Texas, since we're located here, than Dallas, Austin, or San Jose. So that's another one of our strategic alliances that we're working with that we think will be a win-win situation. But in conclusion, the main thing you want to do when you're doing any kind of strategic alliance is try to get a win-win situation. It'll work better for your partners, and hopefully in the end you'll come out with a better solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lloyd. Our last speaker, Michael Callahan, Northwest Texas Association.
This is my second tour of duty in this part of the country. I spent 8 years at St. Anthony's and then went away to Reno, which is heavily into the West Coast medicine managed care. And now I've been back for about 18 months. As I came back to interview at St. Anthony's, this is what I felt like. I didn't look like that, thank goodness. I really got a job. This is the way I felt like because I think I'm a man that is coming from Amarillo's future. And West Coast medicine is an entirely different world. All the coastal managed care services is extremely different than what we are seeing at the present time. And I think it really has given me an advantage. And I feel a lot more comfortable as all these changes are taking place in our healthcare market to know that you can get through it and everything can work out beautifully if you're planning and positioning yourself properly. Next slide, I'm just going to kind of blow the dust off of here because it's really a document that is ancient history on the West Coast in Florida and on the East Coast. But it's a truism that is just leaving this part of the country. And that's the truism of old, which says that whoever controls primary care controls health care. This used to be in effect for the last 10 years. You may have seen hospitals and other healthcare organizations trying to establish family practice residency programs, establish clinics, buy physician practices in the rural communities. And this really was in effect when there was the traditional indemnity healthcare plan that was kind of driving the system. But really the truism of the future is whoever controls the contract now controls healthcare. And so what we are trying to do, and it's actually very easy because, as I say, I've been to Amarillo's future, we're positioning ourselves, and other hospital organizations should be positioning themselves to make sure that they are in control of the contract. And we're doing that. There's going to be two camps in this part of the country. There's going to be the BSA system, there's going to be a Northwest system. So what we want to do is to be as attractive as possible to those purchasers of healthcare, which are traditional insurance companies, self-insured businesses, other managed care organizations. And we're trying to create an identified value so that as a prospective buyer looks at us, they're going to say, this is a heck of a better value on our side of the line than on BSA's side of the line. And to do that, we have a number of strategic alliances that we're putting into place, and we're doing it at the same time that our friends at BSA are kind of going the other way. And I really don't understand it, but I'm very happy that they're taking this approach because it's making my life a lot easier. And as they are discontinuing some of these relationships, we're just sitting there. I don't have to be the brightest guy in the world. All I have to do is answer the telephone because people are giving me a call. So I just want to take maybe 15, 30 seconds on a number of these items that is part of our alliance group. And talk a little bit about rural hospitals. Rural hospitals in this area are in big trouble. They're going to have to partnership with somebody, and as soon as they start getting used to the idea that the tertiary care hospitals that they've been supporting all these years really owe them something, and we get half of our business from the rural hospitals, that they should come to us and say, listen, this is what we need. And there has been a hospital coalition formed with rural hospitals that is doing just that, but it's probably about 12 months ago, our friends at the BSA have disengage some financial support, we were right there to give them $10,000 a month, develop a new relationship, and make a lot of ground up over the last number of years. As many of you may know or recall, the hospital reinvented itself about 2 years ago, changed from a city-owned hospital to a for-profit tertiary facility, and we were unable, as a city hospital, to really go outside the boundaries of Potter and Randall County. We were discouraged by the city leadership because they wanted us to focus on serving just the people who were paying the taxes to support the hospital. So relationships with rural hospitals were difficult for us to deal with, and so we are playing some catch-up. Veterans hospitals are reinventing themselves. In the past, if there was some tertiary care business, tertiary and secondary subspecialty care business, that had to go to Albuquerque from this part of the country. They are now able to enter into arrangements with local facilities, and after a bad experience for another hospital, just answered the telephone, and all of a sudden we were getting all the surgery from the Veterans Hospital through Texas Tech, all the cardiology through the Amarillo Diagnostic Clinic partnership that we have, and now serving the veterans that normally had to go to Albuquerque in this region. I think we're just scratching the surface of the opportunity in the Veterans Hospital because they're going to be focusing most of their services on the outpatient business and trying to keep their veterans well. Business coalition is something that is slow to develop in this part of the country. I'm hoping we can work a deal with the Chamber of Commerce where we can pull together small businesses so that they can have some power and influence as they're negotiating contracts with hospitals, physicians, other providers of services. Right now, small businesses are getting eaten alive with high premiums, and just by pulling together is the only way that they're going to get some power. So we're hoping that we can enter into an arrangement, a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, get a health care plan in place, have the hospitals and doctors take less of a bite out of the fees that are normally paid for health care, and try to start building a very aggressive health care plan. Medical schools are certainly a big, important part of our hospital. We're trying to strike a delicate balance between tertiary health care, serving the private physician, and our teaching mission. Usually medical schools and teaching hospitals are about 90% teaching. Here we're trying to strike a 50-50 balance. And medical schools, what they do is they trade their medical services for access to patients. So there are a number of unpopular patients that our hospital serves, people that don't have any money. Medicaid and Medicare is oftentimes considered rather unpopular, and the medical schools work closely with us to serve these individuals, and they gain an experience also. IPAs are Independent Physicians Associations. They are slow to develop in this area, but in our future they're going to be very important because they will be our partners as we go out to do direct contracts. Emergency services throughout the Panhandle of Texas. There is a network put into place of Panhandle Emergency Medical Services, and it's a network that has the communication center for all emergency services located at Northwest. There's a computer animated screen that can show when ambulances are moving throughout the Panhandle. We know exactly where every ambulance is at all times, and people can be dispatched appropriately. So what this does, it makes sure that we have a good, strong partnership and relationship with these emergency services organizations, that when somebody is injured and too seriously hurt or ill to be cared for in a primary care hospital in a rural area, that they're going to end up on our doorstep and we can serve them. National hospitals is another liaison that is certainly very important to us. Remember, we're trying to create value on our side of the line as opposed to our competitors who have managed care organizations and insurance companies. For example, if someone needed a bone marrow transplant, they could go to the BSA hospital, or we have relationships with groups like MD Anderson, Stanford University, other famous organizations that we have worked out managed care agreements for, that we can place patients we serve in those facilities probably at less than what we would be charged at BSA through our health care plan. Medical staff, that's a day-to-day partnership that is very important to us. Part of our vision statement that we're going to be in partnership with these individuals and work forward to managed care contracts and other arrangements with purchasers of health care. The community is another area where our hospital, since 1924 has been a city hospital, oftentimes serving most of the poor people in the area. But really, it's only about 10% of our business. So we're more accurately trying to share with people what we're all about. And what we are is more a trauma center, a women's and children's hospital, and an intensive care hospital. But we have to get that message out to the community and make us a little bit more appealing than we have been in the past. Because everybody loves a winner, I think, it says, and we want to be associated with winners. We want to interact with the community in a positive way. And that's why we can form liaisons with other not-for-profit organizations and do some things that will help us as well as help them. For example, we teamed up with the Children's Health Foundation and invited Margaret Thatcher in for a speaker series. We raised about $20,000 and passed it on to that organization, since we as a for-profit organization couldn't really accept that type of money. We also did the same thing with the Opportunity School and invited Barbara Bush to come in, raised about $30,000, and it was all returned to the Opportunity School. And what it did is positioned us with very well-thought-of community organizations, and it gave us an enhanced image in the community, and we just want to continue to grow that image as time goes along. Government's going to be an important player in the future. HMOs for Medicaid and Medicare are popular in other parts of the country. We're positioning ourselves, especially with Medicaid, that is going to be in a managed care setting in the year 2001. We at the present time are now serving most of the Medicaid business with women's and children's services. We want to have a network in place, make sure that partnership is going to be there and ours for the taking. Managed care organizations are other important players. They're the ones that have ultimate control, and so we want strong partnerships with these types of organizations. We have our own PPO, which is a broker of healthcare services called Alliance Healthcare. We just entered into a partnership with New York Life to compete with First Care that has had monopoly in the HMO business for some time in this area. Next providers are other important people to interact with. We're signing an agreement with some physicians to establish a sports medicine program that will be advertised beginning this weekend. We also are taking over a program that was disengaged by the VSA system. It's called Concentra. It's an occupational health system. Concentra did $3 million with a diagnostic business in 1997, and by us establishing a partnership and an affiliation with this occupational health group, it's going to make all that diagnostic business come to us now, and it's going to guarantee that our orthopedic surgeons and neurosurgeons are going to be the ones serving those occupational injuries in our hospital facility. Home health care agencies, this is an area where we had intended upon establishing our own, but after President Clinton put a moratorium on the development of home health care agencies, then they slashed all the payments. We disengaged and entered into an affiliation with a local agency. They certainly can do far better, and what we're losing in this situation is just a little bit of control that we thought we should have, but we feel they're going to do a better job and make that agency very successful. Physician clinics, let me speak for themselves. There's some major clinics we have affiliations with. We're building clinic buildings for two physician groups at the present time. We should start in 1998, and it's probably going to be saving them in the range of $500,000, because what we do, it's on our campus. We will place their building on their footprint that they would purchase or lease from us, and then the common parking that would serve those clinics would be part of the hospital's responsibility, because it would serve our visiting public as well as their patients that are coming to see them in their clinic facilities. Subacute care hospitals, these are nursing homes, the long-term acute care facilities. Instead of doing the work ourselves and get off into an area which is not part of our expertise, we're experts in med-surg, acute care nursing, and we will contract with Subacute Hospital at Integrated Health Services and the New Spectrum Long-Term Care Acute Care Hospital in downtown Amarillo. And last, we at times even entertain the idea of trying to do deals with rival hospitals. Our friends at VSA recently eliminated our hospital as a provider under the First Care situation. When we were a provider, we were providing about $500,000 worth of intensive care services for neonatal, pediatric, and trauma care. After we were asked to leave as a provider, they had to pay sticker price for Cadillac services. And so the amount of money we received from First Care jumped from $500,000 to $2.5 million. And so this went on for a couple of years, and we tried to enter into another partnership with them, but as mentioned many times, the culture between the two organizations is just not right for that type of relationship yet. So they will be developing their own support services for pediatric intensive care, neonatal intensive care, and trying to run a direct competition. So that is the strategy we're hoping to use. As you can see, these are just some of the alliances that we need to position ourselves for the future. And either I'm wrong or my friends at DSA are wrong. So we'll see next year giving this whole talk. Thank you.
Questions to the speakers? We still have about 10 minutes left. No questions, no comments? What? I do appreciate it.
Couple of you, I know John did, maybe someone else mentioned, international markets just kick back money, mortgage out whatever. How does that prevent itself? How do you know who to pay and how much? Is it,
Well, it's real simple, they tell you.
Does it put out his hand and say,
It's just gotten that late, it's just gotten that late.
and what stage in the negotiation, or when do you begin to get a sense of that?
In my experience, they never came directly. They would go at the lower level and be something as simple as wanting to deliver their goods to the store and somebody not say, yeah, we could probably deal with that kind of money, but it's a very cultural thing. Our Congress, I hate to say, our Congress are just over the straight grass, not a great business. Have outlawed most of those kind of deals, which almost preclude American business competing unless they have a strategic alliance or a joint partner or a company can do that. I was talking with an African, talking about how in Nigeria they have some of the worst technology in the world deals because they couldn't get American technology because America was private. And so they got Italian technology, which is somewhat less, and for all that. In fact, I'm joking about it because I think from the African side, the greatest economic benefit we can do to Africa is probably blow up the London School of Economics. Because all those African leaders went to the London School of Economics and learned old-time great socialism. And they went back and looked at grandiose steel mills and four-lane expressways. What they really needed was farm-to-market roads and grain silos, just fundamental infrastructure kind of stuff like that. And of course, all those things are big projects, big bucks. The great thing about big bucks is big payouts. And so it brings the middle class in Africa very good.
Kathy, it's still there, but it's a lot better. Mexico was last few years, but they cleaned up a lot of that. And I think here again, that's the reason that they're making progress now. It seemed to me like my experience over the years, that as long as there is that corruption, John talks about so forth, it's big hindrance to the progress of the country. And until it gets cleaned up, we're really not going to make progress. We had one experience in Mexico where the chicken and cattle, and the bureaucrats said, anybody John met, he wasn't back. He just asked for a certain amount of money. I started him going around. He said, well, there's a big difference in our country. He said, we asked for it on top of the table, you guys asked for it under the table.
Let me interject, I think one of the most simple thinkers since World War II was Francis called The End of History, about, I guess, about 8 or 9 years before people were involved. And he basically said the war is over. He was talking dialectical sense of the wrong stuff. And I think most economists felt history was nothing more than a struggle for ideas. He said the war is over. Forget advice war. And then very quickly thereafter, we started seeing Russia going down. We started falling apart. His latest book is Line of Trust. And he thinks that is a missing ingredient in a lot of the third world and something that's keeping them in poverty. I don't care how many billions of dollars the Middle East seems to be able to get, still most of the people are in poverty because the money is never spread out. It's always concentrated in graft and corruption, political systems, or whatever. And he goes to a number of much better illustrations than that to explain why modern society trusts every bit as important as for markets. And there's very little trust in Mexico, although it's a lot better now than it was. Had they not had their financial difficulties, how would they be any better? And I think the financial difficulties in Mexico and Asia are the very, very best things that happen. Change never comes about with time. Never. In history, change always comes about strategic inflection points, tragedy, crisis of all kinds. And I think Mexico has got a chance to pull itself out. And I think Japan will too. It's such a social thing that it's going to take a long time for all of that message from the capitals.
I have a question for you. Would you like to give some suggestions to the people in the community there from non-South Southern? What do you recommend in terms of connection? It seems like most of the not-for-profit organizations that may be represented by foundations and other organizations are those that are struggling financially. And I would suggest that we can be bold enough and recommend these people interact with very successful for-profit friends and businesses. I think that there is each organization has its own corporate soul and its own passion for things that are going on. And I think if you can develop long-term relationship with an organization like that, it's going to be one thing for you and one thing for that organization also. They too would like to be part of solving some of our social problems, and I think with a good, strong, direct business approach and a long-term partnership, I think they will connect.
One of the partners that we have not talked about so far is labor. Would any of the panel members like to talk about partnerships with labor?
We have one, I guess you might say, kind of partnership. Cactus has an ESOP, employee stock ownership program, and employees own 1/3 of the company. I think we're in our 6th year on that, and very successful. We found that there's no substitute for private ownership, and that's precisely what you're able to do if you do it right. You've got it. It's another one of those situations where you have to work at it every day. People with raw deals going on, and so on and so forth. Hopefully you have good results. We've been fortunate, Cactus has been fortunate enough to have good results up to this year. Always make a big deal going around and talking to all the employees. Always kind of appreciate the talk we got. I'm going to get somebody else this year.
We also have the ESOP, we have the profit sharing plan, we have stock options, we have a number of associates own stock, and we also have a stock discount plan. We can take their bonus stock discounted 25% all the long terms. A number of ways to reach the way.
The offering, I mean, it's one of the things we believe by in 2 years we've been able to get a good crew. I have been able to get a good crew. That as long as you make your working conditions really good and you invite input from employees, we've gotten one of what I think is going to be a lot better crew than I would have if I was in Dallas or Austin. because they're a little bit more open to what we're doing here. And they are going to take part in stock ownership plans that we're putting together, as we're kind of following John, what he's doing, and our plan is to take our company public in the next 2 to 3 years also. So we hope to offer them some more than what we have now, but we're trying to make sure they have total input to what we're doing. And that anybody on any portion of our assembly line, if they see a problem, they can, even if they're just a minimum wage employee, they can stop the whole line until that problem's solved, and that supervisor comes in, and they work together to find out what the problem is before they start the assembly line. And I think that's very important, that even, no matter who they are in the organization, if they see a problem and they really feel like it's severe, they can go to the supervisor right then and stop it correct. And that's one of the things that's nice, and what we've done, a lot of people here are willing to tell you when you need to do that too. Where some places are, like in Dallas, or they may not be as vocal as telling you when to be, you know, but at least coming forward to tell you when there is a problem.
In hospitals, employees look at their jobs a little differently. Many of them look at it more as a ministry than a cold-hearted job. So we try to at least play down the cold-hard business decision in the sense that we have to put in place as managed care is forcing us to reduce costs and play up those business values of compassion and teamwork and other things like that that make their job more rewarding for them.
Other questions? I have one question. We have discussed it, in fact, one of our Taiwanese students asked me today. So this one was going, what do you look at? Is it going to be a $150 million house in the next 10 years? Is it going to be like another GM or dominant? Because now we are, somebody told me they are thinking of getting a convenience store, gas station. Is it going to be a pretty big monster? I mean, I love Walmart because when I came here, it was only for years and now. It's 12 years, and that's monster.
Well, I think in an information economy, nothing fails like success. If you're so big, you get like IBM, you felt like they were vulnerable to technological ideas. And I think Walmart's spent a lot of their time trying to fight that. They're always, if you go to a Walmart manager's meeting, you think, what was right? They're very paranoid. And that's why they stay in the meet. But I think at some point in time, when an organization gets so big, that probably does fit in. I just don't know when. I never thought you'd get this large as that. They're an awful big organization.
Before we conclude this session, I would like to show our recipes. We have some certificates for you. Thank you very much for your explanation. Let's go ahead to our